Have you ever noticed how strange it can be that receiving something beautiful sometimes feels more difficult than giving? Most people assume that receiving should come naturally. If someone offers support, affection, a compliment, help, attention, or care, why wouldn't we simply accept it? And yet, for many people, that's exactly where the discomfort begins. Someone offers a compliment and we immediately explain why it isn't true. Someone offers help and we insist on doing it ourselves. Someone encourages us to rest and we suddenly feel guilty. Someone genuinely wants to take care of us and something inside tightens instead of softening. Over the years, both in my personal life and in my work as a Tantra massage therapist, I've become increasingly fascinated by this. Because when people struggle with receiving, it is rarely about the thing that is being offered. More often, it reveals a deeper relationship with trust, self worth, vulnerability, control, or safety. And the interesting part is that these struggles often follow recognizable patterns. In this video, I'd like to introduce what I call the four receiving patterns. These aren't clinical diagnoses or psychological labels, they're simply educational archetypes that can help us better understand why receiving sometimes feels so easy in certain areas of life and surprisingly difficult in others. As we go through them, you may immediately recognize yourself in one pattern, or you may discover that you move between several of them, depending on the situation. One of the biggest misconceptions about receiving is the idea that it is passive, that it simply happens. In reality, though, receiving requires something from us. It requires openness, it requires trust, it requires allowing ourselves to be affected by what is being offered. And for many people, that is far more vulnerable than giving. One of the things I often notice during Tantra massage sessions is that receiving is not something that happens automatically the moment a person lies down on the mat. Sometimes the body needs quite a bit of time before it begins to soften and settle. Not because anything is wrong, but because many people have spent years staying responsible, staying alert, staying productive, or taking care of everyone around them. The mind may genuinely want to relax, but another part of the system is still holding on. That is often where these receiving patterns begin to reveal themselves. The first pattern is what I call the caretaker. At the heart of this pattern is a belief that often sounds something like this: my value comes from helping others. Caretakers are usually wonderful givers. They are often thoughtful, supportive, reliable, and deeply caring. They are the people others turn to when something is difficult. They listen, they help, they carry responsibility. They often become the emotional anchor within their family, relationship, workplace, or social circle. The challenge is that many caretakers become so skilled at giving that receiving starts to feel unfamiliar. Because when your identity has become connected to taking care of others, allowing others to take care of you can feel strangely uncomfortable. Sometimes it even creates guilt. Because if your role has always been the giver, who are you when you become the receiver? This is something I observe quite often with women. Many have spent years caring for partners, children, family members, colleagues, or friends, so giving attention, energy, support, and emotional labor becomes second nature. But when that same care is directed towards them, they often struggle to fully let it in. Not because they don't want it, but because they've become much more practiced at giving than receiving. The second pattern is the controller. The controller's core belief often sounds like, I feel safest when I'm in control. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean controlling other people, but more often it means managing ourselves and our environment as a way to feel secure. Controllers tend to think ahead. They plan, they prepare, they analyze. They like understanding what is happening and where things are going. These qualities can be incredibly valuable, but they can also make receiving difficult because receiving asks us to enter a space where not everything can be managed. You can't completely control intimacy. You can't completely control trust. You can't completely control relaxation. And you certainly can't control genuine surrender. One of the things I've observed over the years is that some people spend an entire session evaluating it rather than experiencing it. They are wondering whether they're doing it correctly. They're monitoring themselves, they're analyzing every sensation and every emotion that appears. And while that may create a temporary sense of safety, it often prevents them from fully arriving in the present moment. The paradox is that the more tightly we try to control the experience of receiving, the less we actually receive. The third pattern is the achiever. The achiever often carries a belief that says, I must earn what I receive. This pattern is deeply reinforced by modern culture. From a young age, many of us are taught to associate worth with performance, achievement, productivity, and success. As a result, rest begins to feel like something that must be justified. Support feels like something that should be deserved. Appreciation feels like something that should be earned. And receiving simply because you are human can start to feel uncomfortable. Achievers often live with an invisible finish line that keeps moving. Once this project is done, once this goal is reached, once everything is organized, once I've worked a little harder, then I can finally relax. Then I can finally enjoy myself. Then I can finally receive. The problem is that the finish line rarely arrives. And over time, life can begin to feel like an endless process of earning rather than experiencing. The fourth pattern is the protector. At the heart of this pattern is a belief that often sounds like it's safer not to need anyone. Protectors are often incredibly capable people. They value independence. They solve their own problems. They rarely ask for help. Others may even admire them for their strength and self sufficiency. But sometimes that independence began as protection. Perhaps vulnerability once felt unsafe. Perhaps trust was broken. Perhaps relying on others led to disappointment. And so the nervous system learned a simple lesson. If I don't need anyone, I can't be hurt. The challenge is that this strategy can eventually block the very connection we long for. Because intimacy requires openness, support requires openness, love requires openness. And while protectors often desire these things just as much as anyone else, allowing them in can feel surprisingly risky. One thing I want to emphasize is that most people are not purely one receiving pattern. In fact, many people recognize themselves in several. You might be a caretaker in relationships, an achiever at work, a controller when life becomes uncertain, and a protector when it comes to emotional intimacy. The goal is not to place yourself into a box. The goal is to develop awareness, because once you can see the pattern, you no longer have to be unconsciously driven by it. What I find beautiful about this work is that every receiving pattern originally developed for a reason. None of them are signs that something is wrong with you. Each one was trying to create safety. Each one was trying to help you navigate life. But sometimes the strategies that once protected us eventually start limiting us. And that is where growth begins. Not by forcing ourselves to become different, but by becoming aware of the ways we have learned to protect ourselves from receiving. Because receiving is not weakness, it is not selfishness, and it is not something that must be earned. It is a capacity that many of us are slowly learning to reclaim. You may have immediately recognized yourself in one of these patterns. Or perhaps, like many people, you saw parts of yourself in several of them. And that's completely normal. These patterns often overlap, which can make it difficult to know which one has the strongest influence on your life right now. That's exactly why I created the free receiving pattern quiz and accompanying ebook. The quiz can help you identify your dominant receiving pattern and better understand how it may be influencing your relationships, self worth, boundaries, ability to receive support, and much more. You'll find a link below this video to download it. And if you'd like to continue exploring topics such as receiving, self worth, embodiment, emotional awareness, trust, and authentic connection, you'll also find an invitation there to join the free Tantra Topics community. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Which receiving pattern did you recognize most in yourself? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.